Okay, drum roll. Without any further ado, it is absolutely my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you my friend, Emily Morgan, who is the visionary of Delegate Solutions and a real true entrepreneurial leader with a heart to help other entrepreneurial leaders and their teams find freedom through delegating. And today she's going to share with us the 10 habits and mindsets of elevated leaders. We're really excited to hear from her. So Emily, I'm going to stop my screen share so you can start yours and invite you to grab the microphone.
Okay, let me just click here. We good to see everything? See the screen? Perfect. Thank you, Jen, for having me. I'm honored to be here. My integrator, Joe Belch, is here. We've been working together for 8 years now, so we have a long-term relationship that predates EOS. So we've really built into our relationship this visionary integrator collaboration. But today we're talking about the elevated leader. And when I say elevated leader, I can't see everybody, but I'm just curious, who thinks that they're an elevated leader? Who thinks they have lots of elevation happening? Probably a little bit here and there. And I'd be curious to hear what comes to mind when you think of the word elevation. Just to have a little fun here, when I think of the word elevation, I think of my favorite band, U2, and their song Elevation. And I think The Edge, who is the greatest guitarist of all time. But today we're not talking about U2 or the song, but definitely keep those 4 syllables in mind as we go deeper into the word elevation and what that means. So our ability to elevate ourselves directly correlates to the overall impact that we're actually able to make. And as leaders, we're all working at high growth entrepreneurial companies, and our opportunity to make a massive impact is limitless. And Joe and I, who I mentioned before, have found that the more that I'm freed up as the visionary, the more I need him freed up. And that those 2 key roles need to keep pace with each other to have really maximum impact. Our core purpose at Delegate, as Jen mentioned, is to create freedom for people to do what they love and have a big impact. And I love delegation, and it's the #1 tool that you can use to elevate yourself and increase your impact. So the last 6 months, I've been writing a book called A Culture of Delegation, which I'm actually turning in next week. So the content I'm sharing today comes out of that book, and it's all brand new. But the sort of theories behind it come from 15 years of helping others find more freedom using delegation. And through this research and experience, I've unpacked 5 habits and 5 mindsets that need to be present for us to elevate how we spend our time. So I took the 5 and 5 and I used it to create a scorecard. And as I go through the 5, I encourage you to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how you think you correlate with those. And then using this format, we can actually pinpoint strengths and growth opportunities to elevate our time. When we get through the talk at the end, the link that Jen shared, the full scorecard is there if you want to take it on your own time. So let's look at first the habits that need to exist for us to have true leverage. And a habit is really just a behavior that starts as a choice, and then it becomes this unconscious pattern. So the first one that we like to talk about is vision. And vision is really our ability to connect with, identify, and action what we're here to contribute. And if you have a crystal clear vision on what you're here to do and what your contributions should be, being able to articulate this to your team to effectively leverage them to move the vision forward is really the big thing that happens with this step. And you can also document the vision and plan the next best steps. So for example, the VTO is a great tool for doing that. The second is clarity. And this is the reflective gut check phase of delegation that challenges so many entrepreneurs, because once we get started with delegation and we really start to feel the impact, it's so liberating that we just want to shed more and more and more. And until we have space, think, and create, and are able to hand things off with ease, it can feel really confining to have to regulate ourselves because there's so much freedom happening. So this is why it's really important to have clarity on what you want to hand off. And it helps us also really commit to our best ideas and sit with an idea long enough to identify what success looks like, why it's important to our vision in the first place. The third is focus. And I believe that delegation is an energy management system. And if we are clear on our vision, it's really easy to spot energy drains in our day. So if you're working with quick start leaders, this can feel really confining because we like to flow and move from idea to idea easily. I know personally, I like the guardrails of a really well-planned week, but I also need the freedom to flow within those, like picture like a fish swimming down a chute. They want to be able to move through, but there's some guardrails up. This is also about really taking a deep breath before we dive into our week and apply some structure that actually creates space to do our most important work. The fourth habit is value. So you might get stuck being able to harness delegation if you don't have the sense of your purpose and your contribution. So if you've built up a mindset for yourself where you're attributing how busy you are, how many hats you're wearing, how many fires you're putting out for the day, shifting those things off your plate can make you feel bored or useless because you've lost touch with your value and your contribution. And idle hands are really the devil's workshop. So the best way to unpack this is to continually run exercises like Delegate and Elevate and continue to pull those things off your plate. And the fifth habit is commitment. And this is the hardest to master, especially for entrepreneurs, because it requires sustained continual effort. And the idea of chasing fun, shiny new objects wears off pretty fast because we can become bored and want to move to the next idea. So when we start to view delegation as an energy management system, it helps us shift our mindset from thinking delegation is so hard, I'm not good at it, delegation is a chore, to actually being a crucial way for you to elevate your time. So now we're going to move on to the 5 mindsets. And the mindset is a way of thinking. It's your attitude. I believe that our mindset is that what we believe is true. So to shift our reality, we have to shift our awareness. So the first mindset is accountable. And of course, it always starts by leading by example. And it's about being willing to give and receive feedback in a healthy way, which can take many years to master. But sometimes we intend to be intentional and accountable, but we don't have enough time to actually be responsive for our teams. So this is why it's a great opportunity to create a feedback loop that you can commit to so that delegations are set up from success from the beginning. And then of course, communicate your expectations around who's doing what by when. The second is evaluative. And at my company, like yours, we run our business using scorecards. Every department has a scorecard and metrics. We review those weekly, and it keeps us better predicting rather than reflecting all the time. So the same principle can be applied to delegation, especially larger ones. So when you want to hand something off to your team, just take a few minutes to think about what some leading indicators of success might be. And this allows us to stay objective because delegation can become so subjective otherwise that it's like hard to really feel momentum. So definitely see what success metrics you can put in place. The third one is intentional. And being intentional is all about tempering ourselves for the greater good of our vision. Because when we're intentional, we are actioning only what's important to us. And it's really important in the work that I've been doing lately, I've uncovered this, that when we're really clear up front with what we want to see, we can then commit to setting it in motion. And what happens when our teams are listening to all the ideation, they're living in execution. And so they're just hearing like, okay, now I have to move on to this, this, and this. And instead of just kind of focusing on what the key things are. So just understand we're in ideation. And typically I'm giving this talk to visionaries. So visionaries are in ideation, teams are in execution. The fourth is realistic. And as a chronic time optimist, that's me, this is the one that I always struggle with. Joe, I can't see you, but you're probably shaking your head. I recognize that a lot of my ideas don't always match my team's capacity to execute. And if I'm not careful, I can break them. So this mindset is always about committing to have a conversation with the person you're delegating to around what a realistic timeline looks like. So you could set some success metrics and then set a communication cadence that works for you both. But by this way, you can recap what you're agreeing to, be clear on what the other person perceives the plan to be, and respond in the moment. The fifth is supportive. And this is my favorite mindset because this is where the magic starts to happen. Now, as we start to implement what I would call a culture of delegation, we're getting everyone delegating and elevating. It's important to understand from a leadership role that our teams are likely scared to delegate. And that might come as a surprise to you, but they're not used to having freedom, autonomy, permission to hand things off their plate. And so if we as leaders are projecting our value is based to how busy we are, how many problems we're solving, how much our hair is on fire, we're not really creating a great example for them. So if we want to create elevated, high-performing teams, we have to lead the charge by valuing our own time and teaching them to do the same thing and giving them the tools and resources to do it well. So no matter where you are on the scorecard in terms of the 5 habits and mindsets, this is a great way to approach your delegation practice because it helps you pinpoint either trouble spots that might be holding you back or habits and mindsets that you are great at that you can amplify further. And you can go back a few weeks from now and retake it after you try to improve different areas and see how your performance has improved. And this is, you can have your team score you, you can score your team. You could even have the conversation with your visionary, have them take it. It's a great opportunity to have sort of a really productive conversation. And we have some other, excuse me, not changing. We have some other resources to help you go deeper with delegation and elevating your time, as Jen mentioned. The ebook number 2 is on that link, delegatesolutions.com/integrator. That's a great self-study to work on some foundational stuff. The scorecard that I referenced is on there. You can print that out or you can do it electronically. It will tabulate your score that way. And if you want to go deeper in delegation, we have a live 6-week e-course as well. So everything is there for your resource.